everybody. Thank you for joining us when I know there are lots of other places that you could be. We really appreciate it, and hopefully the conversation that we're having here is linked to a lot of the action that's happening outside. So this is a session on rights-centered climate and biodiversity action and practice, and we have an amazing range of speakers, but also a really big group of co-organizers for the event. And we're all supporting the message of the instrumentality of a human rights-based approach in biodiversity and climate action. And this is really, I think, at a moment in time with lots of kind of current conflicts and atrocities unfolding all around the world, and the importance of the conversations on rights-based approaches for transformative action. So the session is open. We're going to open it up for discussion later, and hopefully people can share their experiences, and this can be a learning event. But just to acknowledge the amazing organizations that have been behind the scenes preparing for this event. So it's a collaborative event. You only see a few of us sitting up here, but there are lots of people behind the scenes. So just to acknowledge Swed Bio, Soka Gakkai International, the World Resource Institute Brazil, Asia Indigenous Peoples Pact, Amazonians for Climate Network, Amazonia Fox, the Global Youth Biodiversity Network, the Climate and Development Network at South North, the Friends World Committee for Consultation, the Indigenous Land Coalition, Local Governments for Sustainability through ICLEI Africa, the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity, Swedwatch, Women for Biodiversity, and Yango. So you can see it's not just a couple of people that are endorsing the discussions that we'll have. It really comes from a whole range of different people. So the general objectives of the session are to showcase the best practice from the Global South in terms of human rights-based approach, and really how we can scale some of those approaches for impact, and to share some of the tools and approaches that promote meaningful participation, inclusive practices, broaden participation and representation of rights holders in climate and biodiversity action. So it's also to highlight the vital role of rights holders in discussions and ways to protect and support their work. So we really want to emphasize the connection between land rights and solutions to the current biodiversity and climate crisis. And what we'll do is we've got a whole lot of interventions today, but we'll synthesize the discussion that we have, including interventions from the floor, and put that into a report that we can share with everybody. So how the session's going to run, we're going to have a short video and then move into more of a discussion with some of the people on stage, and then open it out for a discussion with all of you. So first up, we have a video from the Sustainable Development Fund in Thailand, and that's really to center the voices of small-scale fisher people in this debate.
ตอนนี้นะครับทรัพยากรในป่าเนี่ยมันลดลงไปมากเมื่อก่อนเนี่ยเราสามารถจะเก็บหาเป็นแหล่งรายได้เป็นแหล่งอาหารที่อุดมสมบูรณ์มากฉะนั้นการลดลงของทรัพยากรในพื้นที่ป่าเนี่ยเราก็มองหลายสาเหตุด้วยกันว่าจากพื้นที่ที่มันเปลี่ยนแปลงไปสภาพอากาศที่มันเปลี่ยนแปลงไปความร้อนนี่มันสูงขึ้นแล้วก็แหล่งเพาะพันธุ์และแหล่งอาหารที่สัตว์น้ำในวัยอ่อนน่ะมันลดลง
การลดลงของสัตว์น้ำวัยอ่อนที่หายไปเนี่ยมีผลกระทบไหมมีคนต้องทำงานมากขึ้นจากเมื่อก่อนออกไปหาปูแสมเนี่ยเข้าไปประมาณตั้งแต่20:00 นเขากลับเที่ยงคืนแต่ณปัจจุบันเนี่ยครับต้องออกไปเกือบทั้งคืนเข้าถึงกันประมาณนั้น
เมื่อก่อนเคยหาได้เยอะผู้หญิงอาจจะแค่อยู่บ้านหรือออกไปช่วยสามีแต่พอตอนหลังมาเนี่ยทรัพยากรมันลดผู้หญิงอาจจะต้องอยู่บ้านแล้วให้สามีออกคนเดียวแล้วตัวเองก็อาจจะต้องไปทำงานเสริมเพื่อที่หารายได้เข้ามาช่วยตรงนี้ทั้งตัวสามีเองทั้งตัวผู้หญิงเองก็ต้องออกไปหารายได้เสริมเพื่อมาช่วยจุนเจือในครอบครัวเพราะว่ามันไม่พอเลี้ยงปากเลี้ยงท้อง
อย่างณตอนนี้เนี่ยโครงการที่กำลังพูดถึงกันบ่อยแล้วก็เยอะมากคือโครงการเครดิตคาร์บอนพวกเรามองว่าถ้าเราจัดการดูแลรักษาป่าด้วยตนเองด้วยชุมชนด้วยกติกาของเราด้วยแผนของเราเนี่ยเงินที่ได้จากการขายเครดิตคาร์บอนเนี่ยสู้เราดูแลจัดการแล้วก็ฟื้นฟูระบบนิเวศเพื่อให้ทรัพยากรสัตว์น้ำของเรากลับมาน่าจะมีโอกาสที่ทำให้คนในชุมชนเนี่ยมีอาชีพแล้วก็มีความยั่งยืนได้
การที่จะแก้ปัญหาตรงนี้นะครับเรามองว่าบริษัทใหญ่ๆ อันดับแรกท่านก็ต้องคิดลดเครื่องจักรเครื่องมือของท่านนะครับในการที่จะใช้พลังงานฟอสซิลเนี่ยให้มากที่สุดก่อนถึงค่อยมาพูดถึงเรื่องว่าปลูกป่าเพื่อดูดซับคาร์บอนนะครับซึ่งจะมาเปรียบเทียบกับที่ว่าเรื่องของการขายคาร์บอนเนี่ยแต่ถ้าชุมชนดูแลรักษาทรัพยากรด้วยตัวของชุมชนเองครับได้สิทธิ์ตรงนี้ของชุมชนเองผมว่ามันมีประโยชน์มากกว่าครับ
Sustainable Development Foundation is the right-based people-centered non-governmental organization in Thailand. SAF have been working with coastal communities, small-scale fisher, advocate for food sovereignty, sustainable livelihood, and promoting governance and participation of people in ecosystem-based resource management. When mangrove forests have been targeted for carbon credit and give benefit to private sector, has caused problem for coastal community as there are not really no guarantee of meaningful participation in management of natural resources. At Petnai, the people have promoting community mangrove forests in order for the people to take up their role in managing, protecting, and also rehabilitating resources. Promoting mangrove forest management, SDF have been ensure multi-stakeholder participation, ensuring participation of women and youth, advocating for customary rights, ensure governance in ecosystem-based mangrove management.
So that was just a short intervention just to connect some of the conversations to a place and to the people that live and work in that place as well. And one thing that the video highlighted was the importance of bringing diverse voices into the conversation and really also highlighted the role of youth. And so we're really lucky to have a youth ambassador and representative, Joseph Fatali from the Global Youth Biodiversity Network. And so I was wondering if you could share some examples of mobilizing kind of global youth and advocating for human rights-based approaches in biodiversity and climate policies.
Thank you so much, Kawisay. Agaw kanda kayo amin. I'm Josefa Tauli. I'm an indigenous Ibalaygang Kanay Garot, and I'm with the Global Youth Biodiversity Network, which is the youth constituency to the CBD, and we're also a global network of young people who are doing work from local to global, advocating for a future of living in harmony with nature. I really wanted to share today a bit about the work that we've been doing for the past 4 years to really advocate for a human rights-based approach in the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And I wanted to highlight this because it's actually weird to see that to take a look back at the past 4 years of our lives, essentially as a global collective, working towards this piece of policy, right? The Global Biodiversity Framework. And when I look back, I see really that it was an approach that came from so many different angles and so many different dimensions of young people, diverse young people working all around the world. And eventually make sure that human rights-based approaches stayed throughout this whole negotiation process and end up making it in the final text, where we have a Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework that strongly recognizes intergenerational equity, strongly recognizes human rights and the human rights-based approach, and the full protection of environmental defenders. And so what I wanted to share really was that this was not just the work of young people engaged in decision-making spaces in the CBD itself, which is incredibly important to really be there and represent ourselves, but it also was from the beginning an effort of capacity building for young people to understand the systemic nature of the crisis that we're facing and to give that capacity building in a very holistic way. It was also this process of consultations, trying to understand what young people want for their future, and ensuring that we bring those and represent those well in the negotiation space. especially so for young people who are in vulnerable situations. It was also the collective action of campaigning, and the campaign that we launched for this framework was Stop the Same, which was really to emphasize the need for transformative and systemic change, and that we will not stand anymore for business as usual. It was also partnership and alliance building, because of course none of that was the work of youth alone. It was really a collective work between many different constituencies, young people, indigenous peoples, local communities, women, and many NGOs and CSOs who were all collectively advocating for the same strong message. And then it was also actions and implementation, so making sure that we are also true to our word in terms of implementing and contributing significantly to these biodiversity policies. So I wanted to share this example, like I said, as a way also to look back on the past 4 years of young people putting so much energy and time into this.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And it's incredible to see the participation, like the broad participation of young people in the climate COP, and I'm sure also in other spaces as well. And alongside making sure that we center the voices of youth, indigenous youth, also trying to make sure these places are inclusive, we have Braulina Baniwa from Brazil, and I was wondering if you could share your perspective from the Amazon, so giving us an example of people-centered approaches for climate and biodiversity action, and maybe reflecting on a report that you recently, a publication that you recently produced.
Boa tarde. Good afternoon. Eu sou Braulina Baniwa, sou indígena mulher, pesquisadora também, pesquisadora indígena. I am Braulina Baniwa, I am indigenous and also a researcher. No nosso texto, que a gente trouxe a visibilidade e a oportunidade de falar da socioeconomia dos povos indígenas. In our research, we could bring about the environment. Biosocioeconomy. Que os povos indígenas e mulheres indígenas têm produzido na Amazônia. That indigenous people and also indigenous women have been doing on the Amazon. É algo que é invisibilizado nos dados oficiais de instituições. It's something that we don't get visibility on the data, official data from the organizations. Os dados mostrou para nós. The data showed us que os povos indígenas e mulheres indígenas, that indigenous people and indigenous women têm suas produções, have their own productions, específicas nos seus territórios, specific on their territories, e que esses trabalhos and these works precisam de apoio, need support, para que continuem produzindo esses conhecimentos, so we can continue to produce these knowledgements, pois são esses que dialogam com sua diversidade nos territórios. Because of this, they can produce on the territories. Falar dessa nova economia na Amazônia, to speak up about this new economy on the Amazon, visibilizar e oportunizar, is to get visibility and also opportunity, que as mulheres e povos indígenas, that indigenous women and also indigenous people, têm seus produtos, have their products, que não degradam a natureza, that won't have harm on the nature, e que sabem usar produtos da floresta, and they know how to use the products of the nature, sem desmatamento, without deforestation, e sabem proteger os rios, and they know how to protect the rivers, igarapés,
igarapés,
que são necessárias para a sua existência nos seus territórios.
they are needed for the survival of their territories.
Então, nesse trabalho foi para também trazer a voz dos povos indígenas
So in this work, we have to bring the indigenous voices
no cenário da publicação
on the data of the publication,
para que o mundo
so the world
conheça seus trabalhos
gets to know their work
realizados dentro dos territórios.
that have been doing on the territory.
Nós, as mulheres,
We indigenous women,
somos as que protegem a biodiversidade
we are the ones that protect the biodiversity
na sua totalidade,
in their totally,
pois respeitamos lugares sagrados
because we respect the sacred places
em nossos corpos.
and our bodies.
Por isso,
That's why
em todos os lugares,
in all those places,
pedimos respeito à nossa diversidade
we ask for respect for the diversity,
e que respeitam
And
nossos
the-
conhecimentos,
and they respect our knowledges,
pois nós, povos indígenas no mundo,
because we indigenous people in the world,
temos a nossa própria ciência
we have our own science,
e sabemos cuidar da natureza.
and we know how to take care of nature.
Por isso somos a própria natureza, como
The-
diz a deputada Célia.
That's why we are the nature itself, so as the Congresswoman Célia Chacriabá says.
Obrigada.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for highlighting the importance of incorporating multiple ways of knowing, and especially Indigenous wisdom in the way that we think about protecting nature and some of the climate action that we can do. And thank you very much for the translation support as well. What we'll do, a lot of the contributions that we're hearing in the session, we'll make sure that they're compiled in the report from this, and we can share links to a lot of the work that's happening from the partners that are involved in the session. So next up we have Carolina Rocha, who is from the Amazonians for Climate Network. And I was wondering if you could tell us about some of your experience in sharing constructive practices to foster protagonism in tackling the climate crisis and biodiversity loss, especially from local solutions.
Well, hello. First, I want to introduce myself. My name is Carolina Rocha. I am an Amazonian. I was born and raised in the Amazon in the city of Belém, which could be COP 30. And I would like to explain a little bit what is Amazonians for Climate Network. It's a network of researchers and academics and climate specialists that are from the territory and are searching for solutions in that. And what we foster is protagonism in the solutions and in the decision-making process of Amazonians. I'm here with a lot of hats. I'm here with as an Amazonian Vox member, which is a organization of communicators that combats fake news about the Amazon. And I'm also here as a member of La Clima, which is an organization of lawyers for climate action. Well, to go into the question, I know I have a little time. First of all, I wanted to say that Carolina is a great researcher, a great person, and just a fantastic human being overall. She truly does very cutting-edge research, and her work on indigenous bioeconomy is groundbreaking. Second of all, what I wanted to say about land rights is that there is no doubt that land rights holds a special place in fostering biodiversity and climate in the Amazon. Historically, the Amazonian states were not entitled to have jurisdiction over their own lands. This was historically a place for the federal government, which also saw the Amazon as something that's foreign, something that is not quite Brazil. It's almost like the other person or the other territory. And what we wanted here is to focus on capacity building for COP30, but also to tackle solutions that are from the territory. What we saw historically is that solutions that are very well-meaning, but thought not from the perspective of people that understand the logic of the Amazon, how it works, how society works, how politics works, how infrastructure works, it tends to fail. And it tends to fail and create wide spreads of poverty around this big pharaonic projects that eventually lead to more poverty. What we saw is that local arrangements for production, small local arrangements for productions is what is better. We do not want scale. We want little production centers that can create jobs and foster this diversity, this biodiversity, that can have rights over their own lands. And I just also wanted to finish that the solutions for the Amazon, for the climate and biodiversity crisis, which are hand in hand, and are going to be built from professionals that have done research in the Amazon for the past decades. They are professionals that do this. They are world class. They are completely capable, and we should give the floor to them. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for highlighting the importance of using kind of local knowledge for local action. And maybe staying at a local level, we have Pablo Freire next, who is a pastoralist from Argentina. And I wondered whether you could share an example of the importance of securing access to land, territory, and mobility, and how that can ensure adaptation and mitigation benefits, especially linked to pastoralists and pastoralism.
Okay, thank you. That works. Well, I came from Argentina, but especially from a very beautiful place named the Chaco. It's a forest very close to Amazonia, little, but very, very beautiful also. And we are part of Red Chaco. Red Chaco is a multi-stakeholder partnership trying to be better in the Chaco. And it includes, our sector is livestock keepers based on mobility. That's pastoralists. That's the strategy is that animals moves everywhere. Well, we're very worried. We're very worried because we feel that governments are talking and solving the world, but we have big problems. So that's what I want to add. We have to face the challenge to access to land property. It's one problem. Usually people have not the title, the legal recognition of the land, and it's very important that when it is done, it has to be done taking into account this strategy of mobility. It's not land property as usual, parceled individually, because animals have to move, and you have to have different lands or different properties. It's complicated, but it could be done. We did it. And climate change and extreme weather events are challenging our traditional knowledge, our traditional tools to face the day by day. So water access, our relation with grasslands, with forests, all of these are changes. So we think that we have to have a dialogue among this knowledge, the traditional knowledge and the new knowledge, how to solve, how to face these new challenges. But with this question of land tenure solved is very important, because people become to change, to work harder and make action to care and restore the rangelands, plan among different families how to move animals, how to use water, and in common areas is very, very important. We have today more than 1,000 families are incorporated small plots with grasslands to move animals, and they have agreements among them how to share the common areas. It's very important. But not only we are talking about restored landscapes for production, for provision. We can talk about another ecosystem service. Water regulation is needed with trees. We need trees in the Chaco and other ecosystems. We need the trees to regulate water. The conservation of forests is the habitat of a lot of a great diversity of fauna, of plants, birds, and different animals is very important. As part of our common day, the puma, well, I don't know in English the name of our wild animals, and also the soil conservation is very important. So, and also forest is the place where we born and where we want to live. That's another ecosystem service, very important. So, and we think that these experiences are very important, and they have to be scaled up. And we are talking in every forum, everywhere, that it have to be created a great climate fund. But there is a lot of money, but accessibility for grassroots level, for fisheries, for pastoralists, for family farming, for all indigenous people, men and women. So that's all. And thank you very much, and thank you for hearing me. Thank you.
Just want to thank all of our speakers, those that are here and also those that aren't here, but behind the voices behind the video. Thank you so much. Really highlighting the importance of taking an intersectionality approach, understanding land rights, acknowledging multiple different values and knowledge systems, and the importance of bicultural biodiversity. We want to move into a more interactive space now, so moving to questions and answers, but maybe we can get some reflections from the floor, questions from the floor. But if you're asking a question, could you pose it maybe to the whole room? So maybe not just to the panelists. We can see if there's someone that's jumping to respond, but also just to open it up so we can have some learning from all of the other people in the room as well. I wonder if there's any brave soul that wants to go first. Yes, at the back.
What actions do you want to see taken to preserve biodiversity? Of course, you all have your research and work, but what do you want to see people from the audience, from the UN, what do you want them to do to protect biodiversity in your homes?
Maybe one sentence from everybody, if that's okay.
Ok. Na nossa terceira marcha esse ano,
in our third march of this year,
começamos a debater a biodiversidade na sua totalidade.
We started to debate the diversity
Pois quando falamos de demarcação de territórios no Brasil,
Because when we speak about indigenous people's demarcation,
estamos falando de direitos humanos que são essenciais para a nossa existência.
we are talking about human rights that are extremely important for our existence.
Então, para nós é importante que as instituições e parcerias
For us, it's very important that institutions and partners
valorizam nossos planos de vida nos territórios.
can value our life's plan in our territory,
E que nos escutem
and they listen to us.
o que queremos
What we want,
trabalhar nos nossos territórios.
what we want to work in our territories.
A ONU pode colaborar,
The UN can collaborate
fortalecendo a importância da consulta
to empower the importance of the listening and the consult
para a continuidade de existência dos povos indígenas,
to continue the existence of indigenous people,
em especial as mulheres e meninas indígenas
especially indigenous women and children
que têm sofrido
that have been suffering
impacto na sua soberania alimentar.
direct impacts on the food chain.
A seca no meu estado, no Amazonas,
In my state on the Amazon,
é enfrentar a violência de fome.
is to face the violence of hunger.
E a gente não quer que isso aconteça no mundo
And we don't want this on the world
e em outros estados.
and other states.
Obrigada.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'm just going to hand it straight over.
Thank you for that question. Maybe for me, I'll bring something a bit different from what I said earlier, in that in my home, I think what I would call for is to continue to support environmental defenders so that they are protected when they do their work. Because without environmental defenders on the front lines who are protecting their land and doing so much that contributes to both climate action and biodiversity action, then honestly, like many of our policies will really not be meaningful and as impactful as they should be. This is coming also from a personal perspective where my family are all indigenous activists, and they do face security risks. Yeah.
Thank you so much. In my perspective, what we have to do is change the way how we look at forests. Our standing economic model looks at forests as a source for primary goods to be extracted. That's the only way that it sees, and that's the main way that it sees the forest and biodiversity. It's only when we change the logic, it's only as we look into the forest as a asset to be maintained is the way that we are going to be able to secure it. And how can we do this here in the context of the UN? Well, first of all, I think that the UN has to talk to each other. You know, the Conference of Biodiversity has to talk to the climate conferences and the World Trade Organization. All of these instruments, they have to be able to talk to each other because the problems are complex and there is no one single organization that's going to be able to fix it. And in the local levels, what we need to do is figure out land rights. It is a fact, proven time and time again for numerous studies, that indigenous lands and conservation units, protected areas, are less likely to be deforested and more likely to be carbon sinks. We have to foster, and there is a lot of land that is still uncalled for. We have to change them into indigenous lands and into protected areas. That's how we can protect forest and biodiversity immediately in the short term.
No. Well, what else to say? No, I think that I was thinking about education to our society, because sometimes we live it at the field level. We know what we need with others, but at the urban areas, people perhaps do not know exactly what's happening outside. So it's very important, and this education, this relation, this information to the society, to the consumers, also. So that's very important. And I think that in terms, because I hear about, we have researchers, it's very important. It's this dialogue I mentioned, because sometimes we have to sustain in forums with our government why we are doing what we do, and sometimes we need some data, the information, and the academic area give us this information and help us a lot to support and to defend our livelihood.
Yes, I'm a lawyer from Sri Lanka, and I'm particularly interested about your initiative or the collective that you're part of, the professional lawyers for climate action. I don't think we have such a collective for South Asian region. I'm sure there are environmental lawyers, but even the climate change is not very much put into the mindset of the people and the lawyers, or the senior lawyers, particularly not the young people, but to their mindset. So I would like to actually get to know more about that initiative. How did you kind of gather the lawyers of the region, and how do you kind of function or collaborate or cooperate, given that there are different jurisdictions? How do you function? Thank you.
Okay, so your question is for the network of lawyers that I'm... Okay, so that network is called La Clima. Is a network that's in Brazil and Latin America. Our main delivery for right now for society is we are following negotiations and trying to bridge the gap between what happens in the negotiation rooms and what happens over here in the pavilions. So taking the social society, the SEOs, CSOs, I'm sorry, taking the CSOs' demands and going back to the negotiation rooms with them and trying to get something in the text or get the attention of the delegates. That's what we engage with that. How do we do that in terms of different jurisdictions? In the network, that has grown significantly over, I think right now it's over like 500 people, more than 500 people. 1,000, thank you, Gaia, thank you so much. Just 1,000 lawyers that are committed to working towards climate action. And I think that the law is it's a crucial instrument, because it's normally what keeps the status quo. So if we engage with the law, we have a chance to catalyze the changes that are happening as they happen in society, and translate that into precedent, and translate that into courts, and really translate that into policy.
Thanks. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Hannah. I'm with the Business, Human Rights and Environmental organization called Swedwatch. And thanks so much for sharing your experiences and for the dialogue that we're having already. I was just wondering, so far we've talked a lot about a certain group of duty bearers, right? States were mentioned, UN agencies were mentioned, but we of course also know that there is a corporate responsibility to respect human rights. So I'd be curious to hear from you or anyone else in the room, really, your experiences of private sector operations that may have impacted your communities, livelihoods, ecosystems, biodiversity, and get a sense from you and you here in the room, really, what is it you would like business actors to know, and what is it you would like business actors to do? There is a range of international authoritative normative guidances available that could guide business actors on responsible business conduct, ranging from the Global Biodiversity Framework, with Target 15 making explicit reference of business actors. We have the UN Guiding Principles on Business Human Rights. They just this year got an information note on climate change. And of course, we do have the OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises that were just updated this year and now really zoom in on the environmental responsibilities. So there is plenty of guidance available. So again, I'd be really curious to hear from the room or people on the panel to their experiences and their recommendations to business actors in particular. Thanks.
Agradeço a pergunta.
I thank you for the question.
Tem uma questão que nós, na própria pesquisa que foi publicado,
there is a question actually in the research that has been published
sobre a nova economia,
about the new economy.
Como nós, povos indígenas, estávamos inseridos nesse debate.
How indigenous people are included in this debate.
A empresa privada precisa entender a nossa diversidade como povos indígenas.
The private sector has to understand our diversity as indigenous people.
Porque nós não somos, como que eu posso dizer, indústria, maquinário para produzir nossos produtos.
Because we are not industry or machines that has to produce our products.
Então a empresa privada ela precisa também dialogar com o nosso modo de viver.
So the private sector it has to understand our way of living.
A gente não está falando de produto, objeto.
We are not talking about the products or objects,
mas sim de produto que carrega a nossa ancestralidade.
But yeah, a product that carries our ancestry.
Então ela dialoga com a nossa cultura, língua.
So it dialogues with our culture, our language.
A gente fala muito da falta de política pública para nossos produtos, mas a gente precisa começar a responsabilizar as empresas privadas nessa relação, povos indígenas, direitos humanos que precisam ser dialogadas e valorizadas nas discussões.
We speak up a lot about our products, but we still have to talk about the human rights. We still have to talk about and the indigenous people also in the products.
Prometo que na próxima Copa estarei falando inglês, porque aprendi a falar português aos 16 anos, então inglês vai ser só o próximo desafio para poder dialogar melhor com vocês. Obrigada.
I promise that in the COP 30 I will be speaking English because I learned how to speak in Portuguese when I was 16. So in 2 years I'll be speaking in English and we can make a better debate also. Thank you so much.
I also wanted to maybe share a bit from my community this time. So I'm from the Cordillera region in the Philippines, and also to maybe connect it to some of the discussions that are happening now at COP28, wherein we are really concerned about, for example, how the transition to renewables will impact our communities very directly, knowing that it is our lands that will be mined out for minerals. It is our lands that will be submerged by hydropower, and it is our lands that are being imposed upon by corporations and by the governments for renewable energy projects without free, prior, informed consent. So I think when it comes to the private sector, what is needed is stronger regulation and stronger maybe sanctions for the impacts that they are having on biodiversity and on human rights. And also guidance for them on what it really means to have genuine, free prior informed consent. Because also what we are experiencing is, they are saying that they are getting free prior informed consent, but really they are manipulating the process, getting fake leaders to sign consent and things like that. And so I wonder how guidance at the global level can be used to ensure that these are actually impacting the ground and the communities. And I don't know the answer. So if you have advice, I'd be happy to take. But thank you. That's our experience in the Cordillera.
Thanks very much. I think we are running out of time, but I just wanted to scan the room and see if anyone wanted to share a quick response to maybe that question or one before. Anyone want to? Yeah?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Renalini Rai with Women for Biodiversity, and also happy to be co-convening this session, an important discussion. What the speakers talked about, what my, confusion is we talked about the CBD, the Biodiversity Convention, and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. So I'm just trying to see all of you who are here, is how will those commitments that have been made in a sister convention be also respected by the other Rio conventions? We are talking about human rights. Human rights is one of the key guiding principles. Well, they didn't look at principles, but it's one of the key guidance adopted last year at the CBD COP15 in Montreal. And I don't know why we have to again struggle for it and again share these experiences over and over again. So basically to look at how do we build these synergies. You are a Rio Convention, it's literally the same parties to the convention. So why is it a big struggle? The second point I really want to see reflected, because it's already the second week, I know most of you are also discussing in the negotiations, is in how do you see that human rights, wherever it is retained? Because we are seeing it more deleted or watered down. Like supposing the global stocktake, on gender, now we don't also have indigenous women removed. So how do we really talk to our allies or parties to really make sure that that language that everybody agreed on, including the right to a healthy environment, which was also there in the COP decision of 27, climate COP, is retained and not watered down. Because we're talking about very high ambitions, very big goals, a lot of money, but otherwise we will again be here for tokenism and not really seeing actions. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for that intervention. And maybe this is one response quickly.
Only one point. We are talking with several colleagues about a lot of effort here, and why not to be present in other conferences, especially biodiversity. And we are talking about how we can be there. And I want to share the importance of these things that you meet people. And 2 days ago, one person, a parliamentarian from Africa, recommend the civil society people present, say, remember that any document that your ministers or prime minister or president sign here, most of your country needs the approval of your parliament. And your parliament is closer than you, and you can make advocacy in this place. So that is a point that I want to share. It's part of the other question, but I think that it's logical. It's really. So we not only go to the minister, the president. We have a lot of people have to analyze and approve these documents, and it's a good place to make advocacy. And also other conventions, desertification and biodiversity.
Thanks very much for that important point of making sure that we're working at different scales and building those solidarity networks at every scale. I want to maybe pass over to Tristan Terrell from the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity, and maybe you can give us some guidance and maybe also some reflections based on the conversations that you've heard. Just going to take it.
Not to fall over what I'm at. Thank you very much for this opportunity, for this somewhat thankless task of trying to capture all the points that were made. So I'm the program officer responsible for biodiversity and climate change and dry and subhumid lands at the CBD. And so my responsibility is in part linking the 3 Rio conventions. And I think that's been a key point being made today about we have the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework that was adopted last year. And well, I'm going to say this anyway. I don't know if Secretariat, I'm supposed to be neutral and all that sort of stuff. But thank you to the efforts of youth, to the Indigenous peoples, local communities, civil society for really pushing through on trying to get it as ambitious as possible, reflecting the fact that it is a negotiated text. And it's one thing about the goals and the targets for 2030 and then this vision of living in harmony with nature by 2050. But it's also how we're going to actually implement that, how ultimately everyone implements that, and taking us away from this serious declining trajectory of biodiversity loss, as well as while we're watching the climate also being drastically affected. And we need to be bringing all of these things together in order to actually put us on the right track to dealing with that. And central to that is recognizing the right to a healthy environment, the need to effectively engage with absolutely everyone, and that's a really complicated, difficult thing to do. Thank you very much, Pablo, for what you were saying there about recognizing the role of parliaments. It's one thing about the decisions being taken or the statements being made at these COPs, and yes, we do have a nice GBF text, we have a nice Paris Agreement. It's about the implementation afterwards when you take it home and making sure that everyone sees a role within that, but also when it's being implemented, that you're not leaving anyone behind. You're not negatively affecting people and their territories and their cultures and their rights because of what's considered to be the greater good. You know, yes, absolutely, we need deep emissions cuts. That's absolutely fundamental, of course, but you can't do that while ultimately negatively impacting people's health, well-being, their livelihoods, their cultures, etc. There's some talk about the private sector and how we're engaging with them. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had our meetings in Geneva, including the working group on Article 8J, which is in CBD speak. That's very much about recognizing the important role and effective engagement with Indigenous peoples and local communities to make sure that their knowledge, cultures and practices are adequately being recognized, at least at that international level. And linked to that meeting was also a decision around digital sequence information, which is about how we're recognizing the genetic diversity and effectively compensating for its use. And part of that, a big part of that, will of course also be the role of the private sector and the extent to which they are benefiting from what is generations worth of knowledge and practices in order to ultimately, for them, turning it into a profit-making product. And recognizing that people aren't machines, that these products come in many different forms, and that everyone needs to be sufficiently recognized and ultimately compensated. But also that elements such as free, prior and informed consent, that any sort of taking is done with the conscious acknowledgement and approval of those who ultimately are the knowledge bearers of these, what ultimately become products. And so it's not just the charismatic, it was a pumas that you mentioned in the Chaco. Not the charismatic megafauna, but also recognizing that everything comes from species through ecosystems to the genetic diversity. It's all integrated, this complex web of life, and it all needs to be respected. And central to that is people, and we need to be able to make sure that people's rights are respected throughout this process, coming to 2030, through to 2050, but frankly, forever. Thank you.
Thanks very, very much, everybody. I can see we are running out of time, so we may not have a chance to respond. I'm looking at the back to see if there are some faces that might chase me away. Any quick interventions before we wrap up? We've got a couple of minutes. Last comments, or maybe what we can do is we can end and then carry on the conversations maybe with individuals you've noticed, somebody that you'd like to speak to and connect with a little bit more. Just to say a huge thank you to everyone on stage and all the other people behind the scenes that supported this event. There is some guidance, there is some information. Some groups have already started thinking about this. There's a bit of a community of practice, a working group that is thinking about biodiversity and climate change. There's also some guidance that has been developed already around human rights-based approaches and biodiversity that will be on the screen, so you can use that QR code to snap it. So these are some of the initial discussions and work that can be built on to really try and connect the biodiversity and climate conversations closer together. I realized I didn't introduce myself, but I'm Nadia Sitas, and I'm with the Climate and Development Knowledge Network at South North. And really, a lot of us are thinking about how do we broker knowledge in different ways? How do we bring climate conversations together with biodiversity conversations? Because they are interconnected, and you can't really uncouple them. And to try and bring all of those sister conventions, all of the different stakeholders and actors, and multiple types of knowledge that are needed for local action. So maybe to say thank you, everybody, and we will share the report from this session, and it'll have a whole lot of contact information for connecting with all of our lovely speakers as well. So thanks very much.